Hey folks, this is Rhykker, and after the triumphant return to Blizzcon in 2023, after skipping a physical Blizzcon for years due to the pandemic, Blizzcon 2024 has been cancelled. We'll discuss what this could mean for Blizzard, because skipping a Blizzcon has been a very rare event in the past. Also this week, Diablo boss Rod Ferguson gave his thoughts on a Diablo TV show, the Helldivers community managed to pull off the impossible, and No Rest for the Wicked launched into early access, and the reviews have been, well, you'll see. We'll talk about all these topics and more in this news wrap-up video, but first, a word from our sponsor, Squarespace. I built my website, Rhykker.com, using Squarespace, and I was able to do everything myself, quickly and easily, and with zero education in the field, all thanks to how easy Squarespace is to work with. Watch how easily I updated the Diablo 4 section on my website to include my latest videos. Squarespace is flexible for any kind of website, with tons of templates that you can easily customize to your needs, no knowledge of coding required. And with their new Fluid engine, it's easier than ever. You just drag and drop elements to move and resize them. You can even set up a custom merch shop with Squarespace now. You just design your products and they handle production, inventory, shipping, all the stuff that's a nightmare to handle on your own. Basically, if you want to build a website, I recommend Squarespace. It's the all-in-one platform for building your brand and growing your business online. Stand out with a beautiful website, engage with your audience, and sell anything. Your products, content you create, even your time. Squarespace is offering my viewers 10% off your first purchase with them. Just go to squarespace.com/Rhykker or click the link in the description to start your free trial and start building your online presence. That's squarespace.com/RHYKKER and use code Rhykker to get started today. Now, as we mentioned, we learned this week that BlizzCon 2024 has been cancelled. Blizzard said, quote, "After careful consideration over the last year, we at Blizzard have made the decision not to hold BlizzCon in 2024. While we're approaching this year differently, and as we have explored different event formats in the past, rest assured that we are just as excited as ever to bring BlizzCon back in future years. Over the next few months, we'll be sharing more details about our launches coming later this year, including World of Warcraft: The War Within and Diablo 4's first expansion, Vessel of Hatred. To celebrate these upcoming releases and to bring our communities together in new and special ways, we will soon share some exciting plans for other industry trade shows and conventions like Gamescom. Now, BlizzCon started in 2005, and until 2019, only 2 years were missed. 2006, which would have been the second BlizzCon, and 2012. The pandemic then forced the convention to be canceled starting in 2020, and it finally returned in 2023 for 1 year, and now canceled again. Now, you can chalk up 2006 as being just an uncertainty as to whether BlizzCon would become an annual thing or if it was just a one-off thing. But then in 2012, Blizzard canceled it, saying that they were focused on getting Diablo 3 and WoW Mists of Pandaria and StarCraft II Heart of the Swarm into players' hands as soon as possible. So they just couldn't divert their resources to also doing a BlizzCon, but they confirmed that the next BlizzCon would happen in 2013. So that was a very different statement to what we got this time, in which they're not really explaining why BlizzCon is canceled, and they're also not promising it's going to return in 2025. It is true that BlizzCon ties up a bunch of talent and forces devs to work on things that take time away from releasing games. And Blizzard had also previously said that they ran BlizzCon at a net loss. Despite selling tickets and everything, the revenue they earned did not exceed the amount of money spent to host the event. Still though, you could chalk it all up to money spent on marketing. Journalists and media attend and report on the event across various outlets. And were there sometimes off years without major announcements? Sure. And it does seem like a 2024 BlizzCon would have been another off year. They already revealed the next 3 WoW expansions, so they kind of blew their load all in 1 year there. Diablo 4's Vessel of Hatred is releasing in late 2024, so we're not going to get a reveal of the second Diablo 4 expansion and take the wind out of the sails of Vessel of Hatred. Overwatch 2 story mode has pretty much been cancelled, so I don't expect any big Overwatch 2 announcements for a while. The survival game was cancelled, so they can't reveal that. And a Hearthstone announcement just can't carry a BlizzCon. So there really would be no flagship announcement short of revealing some new game that's been in the works that we haven't known about to frame BlizzCon 2024 around. But BlizzCon used to be about more than just announcements. It was a celebration of the community and of Blizzard games. But goodwill towards Blizzard has continued to plummet over the years, and even though tickets would still sell out, they'd still be risking negative press about BlizzCon 2024 being a big fat nothing burger with nothing cool and no announcements in an era where everyone is fishing for negative headlines about Blizzard. Also, BlizzCon 2023 was very different from any BlizzCon before it. It's very likely that during the pandemic, everyone responsible for organizing BlizzCon was probably laid off by Activision. And so BlizzCon 2023, they had to get a whole new team together to organize it, and had to go through all the growing pains. There were reports from people who attended that they were unhappy with having to pay higher ticket prices this year for an event that they got less out of than previous years. I mean, here's the reality. The pandemic changed things forever. Everyone realized that there isn't as much need for trade shows and conventions anymore, at least not in person. Online presentations can serve almost as well at a fraction of the cost for pretty much all parties involved, both attendees and hosts. When even E3 shut down, the biggest and most prestigious annual gaming expo since 1995, it's honestly a miracle that BlizzCon 2023 happened at all. Given that BlizzCon is operated at a financial loss, given that it ties up developer resources that could be spent actually making games, given hardly anyone is even doing in-person conventions anymore, it makes sense to only host a BlizzCon if they can ensure it's going to be a banger. This way, when there's going to be a BlizzCon, Blizzard fans could get hyped. They could know, all right, well, we're having a BlizzCon this year. That means announcements. That means I don't have to worry about spending all this money and it's going to be a dud year. It also means we don't end up in a position where organizers need to scramble to find something to frame as their big flagship announcement and have to pressure devs to get ready to announce something. You know, like how in 2018, as the rumors go, Diablo 4 was originally going to be the flagship announcement, but the team couldn't get things ready in time, and with nothing else to announce, the decision was made to make Diablo Immortal the flagship announcement instead. Yeah, this way we don't get another repeat of BlizzCon 2018, which was the first BlizzCon in which Blizzard fans, who had paid hundreds to thousands of dollars to attend the convention, actually booed a new Blizzard reveal. And that's why canceling BlizzCon can sometimes be a good thing. So, No Rest for the Wicked launched into early access last week, and the immediate reviews on Steam were mixed. As people dove into the game, complaints began to emerge about the game being too difficult, too slow, about death being too punishing because it reduces your gear's durability and repair costs were too high. Core ARPG players were not prepared for the punishing experience of a Souls-like game, and Dark Souls players didn't expect all the farming you'd have to do to upgrade your various craftsmen and all that. But a lot of people have been enjoying the game, myself included. I haven't put in a ton of hours so far, but I'm taking my time and savoring the new player experience, talking to all the NPCs, appreciating the lore and the story. The controls feel good, the challenge level is high, but probably not too high. It doesn't feel quite Dark Souls level. We'll see as I get deeper into the game. Level design is top-notch. The characters are full of character. They're memorable. The voice acting is great. The music is great. Art direction is very distinct in a time where all ARPGs are kind of starting to look alike. Animations are great. The story is interesting. Exploration feels rewarding. Itemization is good. The town hub is a whole character of its own. And someone else who likes the game seems to be former Blizzard president Mike Ibarra, who tweeted, quote, "No Rest for the Wicked is taking on a bold direction, mixing classic ARPG with a Souls-like flavor. It's, in my opinion, exactly where the ARPG genre needs to go to stay relevant." And this is a big topic of debate when it comes to this game. Is this an ARPG or not? It feels like a lot of Diablo players say this is not an ARPG. This is an isometric Dark Souls game. But I wonder if Dark Souls players would call this a Diablo game with Dark Souls combat. Because that's what it feels like to me. The thing lacking the most for me in most types of RPGs outside of ARPGs, we're talking Souls-likes, we're talking MMORPGs, is the itemization and loot hunt of the ARPG isn't there. There's something about the way ARPGs do itemization that I just love. And it's that thrill of chasing after cool random loot with cool random affixes. That gameplay loop that is perhaps the biggest driving factor for me in an ARPG. And I still feel that same thrill in Wicked. There's still the random loot drops with the random affixes, and those affixes are interesting. Loot is interesting. There's a lot of different types of items. Now, I agree overall, Wicked is not quite an ARPG by our current definition of ARPG, but it's also not quite a Souls-like. It's something in between and something new altogether. The devs set out to try to evolve the ARPG genre, and an evolution means that it won't be the same thing that the ARPG has been. It's not going to be like any ARPG that came before if you're evolving. Now, for a lot of core ARPG fans, that means that this game isn't for them. But I do think a lot of people are going to pass on this game without really giving it a chance. And I think those people, or at least some of them, might actually be losing out on something here. I'm really glad that I gave this game a chance. I don't play or particularly enjoy Dark Souls games. I don't play a game in general looking to be slamming my head against something difficulty-wise. And my first impression with Wicked was frustration, I'm not gonna lie. But I fought through that, and I began to find joy in overcoming combat challenges. And I got to a point where I realized, okay, well now I'm not just getting a dopamine hit when I get a good loot drop, I'm getting a dopamine hit just from defeating an enemies, because I'm feeling rewarded for playing well, for learning an enemy's moveset, for improving my skill. Now, does this mean that the current kind of modern RPG has to go away? Not at all. There's always going to be an audience for that, there's always going to be a place for that, but I do think that Wicked is carving out its own niche, and it would not surprise me to see more ARPGs take that kind of approach. Or maybe we don't want to call it an RPG anymore. Maybe we want to call it something else. But this either evolution or new genre, I can see more games going in that direction. Maybe they won't be as challenging, but that same kind of combat where it's not just basic clicking on enemies, where the combat is actually skillful and you're rewarded for being skillful for it, where it feels a lot better, you have much more control over your character. And I think a game that actually takes that, but puts it in a game that is less challenging, is probably going to break down that last barrier for modern ARPG players. Because a lot of modern ARPG players just want a game where they can just relax and kill monsters. This is not that kind of game. You cannot be relaxed while playing this. Well, I mean, there's maybe instances where you can be, but overall, it's not a relaxing game. Now, outside of that, is the game perfect? No, but it's early access, and the devs have already been incredibly responsive to player feedback. I don't want to get too deep into criticism yet before I fully explore the game, but I can see that inventory management is going to be a pain at some point. Just in general, from how you hold items, how many items you can hold, how many items in a stack, how you have to transport items back to town, back to your base, within town, moving items from chest to chest, the way you have to carry them over to bring them to your craftsman to craft things. It's all very cumbersome, it feels. And the devs are already exploring solutions based on player feedback there. Other criticisms involve, I don't love the idea of time-gated content. There's some quests on timers or completing crafting on timers. We'll see if this ends up bothering me in the long run. Right now, it's not a problem. It's just something that, I have a visceral reaction of not liking it. And I don't know if that's just because it's associated with either, dailies and MMOs or mobile free-to-play games and things like that. Another issue is that, the issue is not that weapons define the skill set that you have available to you. That's not the issue, right? That's just a part of the game. So every different weapon has different moves on it, different skills, you can say. And so that basically defines a part of your build there. Now, the problem is that a lot of weapons have stat requirements, a certain amount of strength, a certain amount of dex, etc. And when you level up and you put your stat points in, those are locked in and there's no respec. So you either have to hoard all your stat points until you find a weapon that you think you're going to want to use, and then, this is a really cool sword, let me dump 10 strength all at once, or you otherwise just can't really try out new weapons because there's no respec, so you either have to make a new character to try out this weapon, and I don't know. The devs have stated that they do want to add a rare and expensive respec, but I don't think that's a solution to this. While I do think it's great that they want to do that, I still think we should just have some ability to try out any weapon. Just try it. We can be terrible at it, right? There can be some penalty where we do no damage, something like that. Just let us try the moveset, because I don't know that I want to invest all these stat points into this weapon only to find out that it's trash. Or not that it's trash, but I hate the moveset. All it's going to do is encourage me to go watch a YouTube video showing off the moveset rather than experiment in the game. Now, again, all that said, the devs have been incredibly responsive to player feedback, and things that are on their radar include key remapping, which, I mean, yeah, that's an absolute necessity to allow players to change their keybinds, aspect ratio limitations, performance enhancements, and the ability to pause the game. They've also been ridiculously quick at releasing hotfixes to address issues. Their first hotfix was a big one, and it was released within 24 hours of early access launch, addressing a lot of the most common criticism. So they reduced the amount of durability damage that we take on dying, they reduced repair costs, they increased the drop rate of repair powder, they reduced the stamina cost of attacks, they reduced falling damage, and they made some other changes as well. Already those things addressed huge complaints and started turning things around quite rapidly. And it seemed that there was no rest for the weekend for the devs, because they released hotfix 2 on Saturday, which improved performance, durability again, food costs for, that's like healing potions basically, some other changes as well. Hotfix 3 then came out on a Tuesday. That was the biggest one yet, with more performance improvements, balance changes, improvements to loot, harvesting, graphics, and more. Hotfix 4 came out later that same day with even more balance changes and performance improvements. Then Hotfix 5 came out on the 1-week early access anniversary, and it has more performance enhancements, balance changes, more ultra-wide support, quality of life changes, including an increase to stack sizes, 8 new shields, bunch of new shields, and more. One excellent new quality of life feature is the ability to deposit all items from your inventory into a selected chest that you have open. As long as the items in that inventory, they're going to go with the matching items in the chest. So basically, let's say you have a dedicated chest for crafting materials, and you've picked up a bunch of crafting materials while out adventuring. With one button, all the crafting materials that you got on your journey is going to get zooped into your chest. A little similar to PoE stash affinities, kind of. Then they increased the stack size for cooking and crafting materials to 25. It's nice, not enough of an increase in my opinion, but we're moving the dial. And then patch 6 is confirmed to be coming this weekend. They're not done yet. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me if by the time this video goes live, the patch is already live. And following all these changes, the Steam reviews have been growing increasingly positive. By the time it reached 1 week into early access, Wicked had reached mostly positive reviews on Steam, with 74% of reviews being positive, and the numbers are just climbing. After those initial mixed reviews came out, creative director Thomas Mahler tweeted, quote, "Our next few weeks and months will be about turning a 58 into a 90. Challenge accepted." Well, they were literally already halfway there after 1 week. The team is incredibly open and receptive to feedback. You don't see any defensiveness from them, no blaming the players. Rather than try to convince us that we're wrong for having our opinions, or we're playing wrong, or we're bad and we need to get good, they take it all as a challenge to improve their game. I really like these guys. I got to film 2 interviews with them in their studio in Vienna. If you haven't seen those videos, go give them a watch. They're super passionate talking about the game and the ARPG genre. One thing they spoke about was how, being a smaller studio, they sort of feel like they need to innovate to stand out from the crowd, whereas a big company like Blizzard is almost forced to play it safe and not take risks. And in another tweet, Thomas Mahler said, quote, "If we wouldn't be doing this, I'm pretty sure Diablo 5 will become pretty much the same game Diablo 4 was. Just like Diablo 4 is pretty much the same game Diablo 3 was. Now let's see what'll happen. I hope what we're doing also liberates the folks at Blizzard and Grinding Gear Games to do some crazy stuff. Because now they can point at us and go, but look, they did it successfully, why can't we?" And the suits might just agree with them at that point. They even released a roadmap for early access. Update 1 will be their multiplayer update, which will also add 3 more zones. Update 2 introduces the Breach, which is the second part of the story. And the future seems to hint at farming, which Thomas Mahler basically confirmed on Twitter, saying we'll be able to buy farmhouses where we can plant seeds and grow crops, which will be really helpful for food ingredients. And speaking of farming, the gameplay trailer for Valheim's Ashlands update has released, and public beta testing is now available. The devs stress that this will be the most difficult biome in Valheim yet, and encourage players to start a new world to ensure the best experience. While there's no end date for the beta, based on past experiences, we can expect a couple to a few weeks. Valheim is one of those games that I enjoy playing with friends, and I think it's about time to boot up the old server again. Well, after beta, at least. Another game I've enjoyed playing with friends is 7 Days to Die, and after 12 years in early access, it is finally launching. I never thought it would happen. The game has been in constant development throughout this time, and it sounds like things aren't really going to change much with the full release, with more updates planned all the way into 2025. Oh, but one thing that is changing on launch is the price. It's going from a $25 early access price to a $45 release price. I'd like to revisit this game too, but it does sound as though it's still as janky as ever, and that's been a deal breaker for some of my friends. Then Stellar Blade released this week, and it's getting great critic reviews. On OpenCritic, we see a top critic average score of 83 out of 100, with 87% of critics recommending the game. Seems like it's a great action-adventure title. Oh, and one interesting tidbit we learned is that the same uncensored version of the game is releasing in all countries. Normally, different countries have different censorship rules, typically regarding either violence or nudity, and so you might see some differences in games in different regions to get around these various rules. Now, in this case, the devs singled out Japan, which generally has pretty harsh rating guidelines regarding violence, dismemberment in particular, so I think this censorship, or uncensorship, is likely regarding violence in this case. In Diablo news, we'll have the next dev live stream on May 2nd, where they'll go into details about the Season 4 theme and more. The Diablo Twitter account also put out an APB to solicit questions from the community about itemization and Helltide for an upcoming video, which is said to be something different from the dev stream. Then, in an interview with Windows Central, Diablo boss Rod Ferguson hit upon a number of topics, including a potential Diablo TV series. Due to the popularity of the Fallout series on Amazon Prime, he was asked if he can see something similar done for Diablo, and he replied, quote, "Yeah, I definitely think it could work. That's one of the things I really liked about Diablo as an IP, is that it's got very relatable themes because it's the high heavens versus the burning hells, and that idea of good versus evil. I think that's something that could translate very well to something like that. You know, I wish I had something I could talk to you about today, but in terms of just the general idea, do I think it could work? I definitely do." This suggests there is nothing currently in the works, but it's possible, maybe one day, hopefully one day, and this actually takes us back to the sadly canceled Diablo Netflix series. You see, back in 2018, rumors were circulating about a Diablo Netflix adaptation, which was then confirmed by the alleged showrunner Andy Cosby when he tweeted, quote, "I guess I can confirm I am indeed in final talks to write and showrun the new Diablo animated series for Activision and Netflix. It's very exciting, and I hope to the high heavens it all works out." He promptly deleted the tweet, realizing, uh-oh, but not before the internet took notice and took screenshots. Now, Cosby had written the screenplay of 2019's Hellboy. He has other credits as well, so he's not just some random yahoo spouting nonsense. Then in February 2020, Nick Van Dyck, co-president of Activision Blizzard, revealed through his LinkedIn profile that the series was in pre-production. But then since 2020, we've heard nothing else about the project. And I think it was canceled because in late 2020, Activision Blizzard sued Netflix for poaching executives. So I think at that point, the relationship was soured. I don't see going through with a project with a partnership when one entity is suing the other entity for unlawful conduct, contempt for the law, unfair competition, and aiding and abetting breach of fiduciary duty. Which is really a shame because I think Netflix's animated, gory Castlevania series is a glimpse into what could have been. Elsewhere in the interview, Rod expressed that he really wants to get the PTR on console as well, that's the test server, but he highlighted the console certification process as being the major roadblock there that they're trying to work through. Hopefully their partnership with Microsoft is going to allow that to work out for Xbox at least. Then he also spoke about some changes being made to the cosmetic shop. They're starting to release class bundles, basically bundling 2 cosmetic sets for one class together at a fraction of the cost. Cool, cheaper cosmetic prices is nice. But then he also said they're doing this idea of personalized discounts. Basically, based on how you play, they'll discount different things. And to read into that as charitably as possible, I guess that means if you play mostly Necromancer, you're going to get discounts on Necromancer stuff. Overall, though, I'm not sure I love the idea of different people getting different prices for the same thing. Honestly, I'd rather just give everyone a coupon and let the people decide what they want to apply that coupon for. I don't want to have to now figure out how to game some algorithm to get a discount on a rogue skin when I'm mostly playing Barbarian this season, even though I really want to make a rogue, and I really want that rogue skin. I don't know. Then for Diablo 2 fans of the Median XL Sigma mod, patch 2.9 has been announced, with Season 37 arriving on May 3rd. This season revamps rare items, making them endgame viable, and giving players new deterministic crafting systems to modify rare items. And since we were talking about the Fallout series, it has already been renewed for a second season. No surprise, since it's among the top 3 most watched titles ever on Amazon Prime. The Fallout games have continued to see a revival thanks to the series, with Fallout 76 seeing over 1 million downloads in a day, and over 5 million downloads across all Fallout games in a day. But it's not all good news for Fallout. The highly anticipated, for 2 years now, it's been 2 years since they announced it, the highly anticipated next-gen patch for Fallout 4 released. And while it's probably nice on consoles, the over 14 gig patch seems to do very little on PC other than create a bunch of problems. Still no proper ultra-wide support without mods, still no fix for weapon debris causing crashes on RTX cards, modded saves are, of course, broken now, and all of this for basically no graphical improvements or anything, really. Meanwhile, mod support is basically broken altogether, as mod authors will need to now update their mods to be compatible with the new patch, which has thoroughly screwed over the makers of Fallout London. The project lead basically said exactly that. Fallout London is a DLC-sized mod that was planning to release on April 23rd, but then when Bethesda announced the next-gen patch for April 25th, well, the mod authors pushed back the release date. They're not going to release the mod, and then 2 days later it's all broken. So 4 years of working on this mod, and now they basically have to see, okay, what does this new patch break, and how quickly can we adapt the mod to accommodate this? Or do we just release on an old version of the game and players will have to run the old version of the game? Then in Helldivers 2, we achieved something huge this week. For the first time since launch, we succeeded on a defense major order. But only because the devs helped us out, I think. We got word from community manager Spitz that this major order was set up so that we would lose ground on either the Terminid or the Automaton front. That it would be unlikely that we can defend both fronts and would have to come together as a community to focus our efforts on either one or the other. Well, unfortunately, that didn't pan out very well. And part of the issue with coordinating within the community is that there exist supply lines between planets, and we can't visualize that in-game. There's really no way to know this information unless you actually arrive at a planet and can see what that unlocks. So basically these supply lines mean that in order to go to planet A, you must first go through planet B or planet C to create a supply line to that planet. And there's no logic that you can deduce on your own to figure out where these supply lines are. Thankfully, though, there are community resources to display these supply lines, and the devs have confirmed that they are actually actively working on implementing them in-game. I'm always in favor of this. While I love community resources, I feel like people should not have to leave the game to understand how to play the game. But regardless, using this hidden information, the community did manage to hatch a clever plan to win 2 planets for the price of 1. Both Charon Prime and Martal needed to be defended as part of the major operation, but there's a supply line running from Martal to Charon, so by the game's logic, cutting off supply lines from Martal to Charon by fully capturing Martal should stop the automaton attack on Charon Prime. So rather than divide our attention trying to defend both planets, we focus all our attention on Martal, retake Martal since winning Martal should also get us Charon, right? Well, Spitz came in and said that the game just isn't built to work that way. However, he communicated with Joel the Game Master, who agreed to honor what will become known as the Martal Gambit. If we could capture Martal, then he would manually award us the win on Charon as well. This is the beauty of having a game master. This living, breathing world. Unfortunately, the gambit did not pay off. There's just no way for enough of the community to coordinate on an operation like this. And things were looking dire until we were nearing the end of the operation, and it just seemed like there was no hope at all. But then suddenly our progress started to skyrocket. In the last 12 hours, it seemed like victory was finally actually possible. We had word that Joel was dialing some knobs to help us out, and that there also may have been a bug that wasn't properly tracking our progress earlier in the operation. But nonetheless, it made for an exciting, if unexpected, finale. We won. Though it did feel a little tainted, I gotta admit, like the DM fudging dice rolls to let us win. Narratively though, this is the best outcome. After riding high after high, easily smashing major orders, we got a challenge that we were outright failing. We're losing planets, suffering losses, and then right when most dramatically appropriate, we turn things around and squeeze out a win. And it is a Pyrrhic victory though. Again, we lost some worlds to the enemy, but that's also a good outcome because that means we have new planets to play on. Now our new major orders came in. We have a choice to make as a community. Great. We're always great at coming together and making a decision together, right? So we need to either liberate the planets Chuhi or Penta. And depending on which one we liberate first, we'll unlock one of two new stratagems, either anti-tank mines or the air-burst rocket launcher. Spoiler, rocket launcher's gonna win. No one likes mines. But it does seem like we may be able to test out these new stratagems while deployed on missions on these planets. So it's definitely worth hopping on to take on these missions and take these stratagems for a test drive. I do imagine sometime in the future we'll get the other stratagem. I just hope it doesn't happen too quickly so that we actually feel like our choice here mattered. Then this week's patch was actually delayed. I think this is the first time they missed a patch. The devs said that they were still cooking. And at this point, I expect the patch to land once this major order is complete, which will be in a couple days. Meanwhile, Embracer Group this week announced that it'll be splitting into 3 companies. Asmodee, which will continue to be the board gaming branch, as it always has. Coffee Stain and Friends, to be renamed later. And that's going to handle indie budget and AA and mobile games. And then the main entity that will handle AAA game development, including Eidos and Crystal Dynamics, that is temporarily becoming known as Middle-earth Enterprises and Friends, which will also be renamed later. The CEO of Embracer will still own all 3 companies, but they're now going to be 3 independent listings in the stock market. And this should mark the end of the 9-month restructuring period for Embracer, which saw the closure of studios and the laying off of more than 1,400 employees. As a reminder, this all started when Embracer accepted a $2 billion deal with a Saudi group, after which they started to buy up a bunch of studios on the promise of $2 billion, only to see the $2 billion fall through in the final hour and find themselves massively in debt. After cost-cutting measures and selling off studios, they were still $1.5 billion in debt by the end of 2023, and close to $1 billion in debt as of now. However, thanks to the magic of corporations, Embracer is moving that billion in debt over to Asmodee, the board game company. So now Embracer, which is now being temporarily renamed again to Middle-earth Enterprises and Friends, has basically no more debt. Look at that. And because banks trust the board game industry more than the video game industry, 5 banks agreed to basically lend the $1 billion to Asmodee to be paid off over time. Look at that, folks. It's like magic. You just wave your hands and the debt just disappears. The CEO also clarified that the Embracer name is definitely going away. And when asked if it's because of all the negative press now associated with the name Embracer, he said, quote, "Not at all. These name changes are strategic decisions aimed at allowing each new entity to develop its own unique brand identity, tailored to its specific business focus and to maximize its potential in the market." Yeah, I'm sure it's totally not to obfuscate the identity of your megacore in an atmosphere where everyone lets out a collective ugh when they hear the name Embracer. And that's going to wrap up this week's video. But do be sure to check out last week's video in which we discuss what Microsoft is doing to Blizzard. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Patreon supporters for making these videos possible. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to join Rhykker's Raiders for more gaming content.